I welcome you all to the weekly answer writing series. So today also I have picked up a topic जो many of you had suggested me. So that is why I have picked up this topic. Again, this question as such is not given in any PYQ, but similar lines pe questions were there about the Ruth Benedict, her works, on Margaret Mead, her works, and in Indian anthropology also there were questions like that. So I've just combined both of them, and in general Sara women anthropologists ka whatever contribution there was, I've just combined them because this is a platform for you guys and your suggestions, your requirements matter a lot. So many of you were telling me to come up with a video on what is the contribution made by women in the field of anthropology. So that is going to be precisely our topic. Exhaustive content is there, ठीक है? So we are going to cover as much as we can, and मतलब we are going to touch upon everything. But again, क्योंकि ये इतना exhaustive topic हमने बना दिया है, तो what you can do is you can make the notes out of the slides because वो ज़्यादा material है, and paper में you have to write very concise, crisp answer. But your understanding के लिए you have a good amount of order in this very lecture itself, so you can make full notes from this only, right? So let's start with it. The question says, discuss the contributions women made in the field of anthropology. So this is about both Indian anthropology and anthropology as a discipline itself. So the second part of the question says, also mention some notable Indian women anthropologists and their contribution to the field. So ये paper 1 and paper 2 का मैंने combine कर दिया है, so that हम women anthropology की बात अभी कर ले, because जैसे I was looking at I think it was this year's paper or maybe last year's paper. In paper 2 there was the question on B.R. Ambedkar and his ideas on the caste system. So now in today's time you cannot rely on what is explicitly mentioned in the syllabus. So we have to go a little out of the way and study many things, because many a time sociologist का question, एक आधा question comes from the field of sociology in anthropology, right? So we have to cover certain sociologists also who have done notable work in anthropology. That is not the topic for today, but in Indian women anthropology there are women from sociological field also, so I have covered that also. So let's start with the today's topic, right? So what are the contributions made by women in the field of anthropology, and about contributions of notable Indian women anthropologists, right? So let's first state the, we can just see कि feminist anthropology आया कहाँ से. So you can basically say that feminist anthropology जो as a concept है, या entry of women in the field of anthropology can be seen in 3 broad phases. So there were 3 broad phases of entry of women in the field of anthropology. Much like many other fields, ठीक है ना, there was a dearth or a paucity of women in this subdiscipline, in this discipline also. So as the consciousness of women arose, and there was the conducive environment for women to enter, and when women wanted to raise or voice their opinions, there were different movements, or which you can say coincided with the feminist movements all across the world in other fields also. Much like that in anthropology also it happened around the same way, and it came as a critique to the androcentric biases. तो androcentric biases हो गए, you can say the male bias, right? जो male bias always रहा है in every way, तो उसको it was a critique to that, it was a reaction to that, and there were 2-3 names like Margaret Mead and Ruth Benedict, you all are very aware of, and they tried to bring in more other genders idea, the ideas of women in the field of anthropology, thus making it more egalitarian. ठीक है? So starting you understand, it came as a reaction. ठीक है? It came in 3 broad phases we are going to discuss now. It made it more holistic and egalitarian. ठीक है? Then the phases were, the first phase you can say from 1850s to 1920s, and इसमें it was just that include the women in the field of ethnography. That means abhi tak what was happening, only men ethnographers in, because anthropology itself also grew, not like एक ही दिन में anthropology fully develop हो गया, right? Anthropology itself also grew in phases. So it started as an ethnographic study. पहले armchair anthropology से start हुआ, then it became more field based और ethnographic studies होने लगा, then more holistic understandings, more different ideas were inculcated, and that all we have studied. So similarly, when first phase started, it just said that females should also go and do the ethnographic studies, because up till then what was happening, only males were studying the males. That means अभी तक क्या होता था, whether it was in armchair anthropology or when the fieldwork had started, it was only the male ethnographers who were going to the field and were studying the male informants. That means उनके जो major informants थे, they were males, and even the people who were conducting the ethnographic studies were males. So it was like only one gender was studying only one gender, and you cannot holistically talk, because half of the population is female, right? So if you're not studying that, how can you talk holistically about humans? Because you're not studying one gender, you're not studying females, right? So it started off कि women should also participate in the ethnography. ठीक है? फिर the second wave came around in 1920s and 1980s. This was the time when World War was there, and the things on the global platform were changing. ठीक है? Women more and more were entering the work arena, right? So here they started to the second phase started and separated the notion of sex from that of gender. Now what is the notion of sex and gender? You must understand, sex is a, you can say, is a biological term. Sex is a biological term, whereas gender is a, gender is, you can say, a more a neutral term, right? Neutral term है. Whereas you can say जो sex है, it's a very gender जो होता है ना, it's more of a inclusive term and it does not create any bias. Whereas sex में जब हम बात करते हैं ना, it creates biological biases, right? Social biases, the feeling that women are not at par with men, the females, because there are biological differences between male and female. ठीक है? It is believed that females are subordinate to men, and all those kind of patriarchal thoughts and all those androcentric biases, you can say, right? So they started to separate the notions of sex from that of gender. And why, you know, these terms should not be used interchangeably, because one has a social construct, one is purely a biological construct, and you cannot you know, differentiate between people just on the basis of their gender, right? Anybody who's a male does not make him superior to a female, right? So these all concepts, these all constructs in our mind, ठीक है? Much like other concepts of racism, right? Ethnicities, tribal groups, ये सब उस time पे, it was the time of Renaissance, you can say. World in every way it was moving toward more of a modern era, where, you know, the principles of rationality, ठीक है, logic, and you know, it was the time where people were questioning things that had been there from the time immemorial. So the concepts of gender, उन्होंने बोला कि don't use the term sex but use the term gender because it is more neutral term, right? So these were the second phases, ठीक है? And इसमें they were also talking about, okay, let's go to the third phase. The third phase started around the 1980s, ठीक है? इसमें they went ahead. Not only now they were talking about the issues of gender, but they were talking about the asymmetry, not only in ethnography but in other sub-disciplines like archaeology, physical anthropology. Now they had moved ahead from just having females in the ethnographic fieldworks to other sub-disciplines like physical anthropology में females को होना चाहिए. In archaeological anthropology there should be females who should be you know, giving their contribution, and the ideas of power, how power dynamics you know, change with males and females and all those wider issues. So you can say the contemporary phase, which is the third phase only in the feminist anthropology, it went beyond the ethnographic studies, the notions of sex and gender, and it talked about much more broader topics like the idea of power dynamics, reproduction, production, Marxist ideas on feminism, then not Marxist ideas on feminism but feminist ideas on Marxism, right? Then the ideas of gender asymmetry in other subdisciplines of anthropology like archaeological anthropology, physical anthropology. So this was the third phase. Now we have studied the basic idea, and now the question starts, that role of women in anthropology. So अगर हमको बात करनी है ना of role of women in anthropology, you can, if I have to describe it in 2-3 words, I would say उन्होंने एक gender sensitive perspective लाया, ठीक है? You should understand that though males and females are equal in each respect, but the way they think, the way they perceive the world, much like every individual, ठीक है? It can also be said that male's perspective towards life and female perspective towards life is very different. So if we are not taking into consideration the perspective of a very big population, ठीक है, we are missing out, है ना, on the diversity or the richness, ठीक है. So when female perspectives came into anthropology, it gave a very new, fresh perspective towards anthropology, made it more diverse, made it more gender sensitive, made it more inclusive, holistic, ठीक है. So इसमें one of the biggest and early names would be Ruth Benedict and Margaret Mead. We are not going to talk much about them because we have studied them holistically in the anthropological theories. So I'm just briefly telling you. Ruth Benedict, she gave the pattern of culture and how individual personalities, you know, shape the cultures, right? So this was one of her, you know, pioneering work. Then Margaret Mead came, right? She distinguished between sex and gender, okay? And her ideas of in coming of the age in Samoans, for example, she talked about and she borrowed the ideas from psychology and how, you know, the personalities were, you know, interrelated with our psychological patterns, right? And how the cultures affect the psychology of people, the mental you know, balance of people. So adolescent you know, age ki baat she did in coming of the age in Samoans mein. She talked about adolescent mental health and how it is you know, very influenced by the culture they living in. तो उसमें उन्होंने एक अमेरिकन सोसाइटी की स्टडी करी थी एंड सैमोन्स की स्टडी की थी. एंड सैमोन्स में दैट adolescent stress was not there because of their culture, because they were a lot more open and their ideas were a lot more open towards sex before, you know, marriage, or ideas like that of being boys and girls being together, ठीक है. So this prevented the adolescent mental health in a lot of ways, ठीक है. So this was Margaret Mead and Ruth Benedict. They were one of the, you can say, the very starting में जो women anthropologists आए, who were a role model for many of the generations after them, right? So they started to talk about the gender issues and how sex and gender were different categories and how they were related, right? उसके बाद, because अब ये दो हम कर चुके हैं, I'm not talking about them a lot. I am going to talk about these two you know, females from the world which I found very interesting concepts they gave. One is Sherry Ortner and one is Eleanor Leacock. She is Eleanor Leacock and she adopted the Marxist approach, okay, in her ethnography, and she argued that capitalism was the source of female subordination. So what she said? She said that capitalism was the source of female subordination. So you can say in a male dominated society where males are the ones who are getting you know, the living, the money for the family is earned by the males. So in this capitalistic world, where everything is controlled by the money aspect, ठीक है, उसमें the subordination of women is because of the capitalistic attitude. So उन्होंने एक वहाँ पे she drew a comparison there, ठीक है. And there were ideas on religion also, similar ideas on religion also, that religion was not given by her, but I'm just saying that with female anthropologists coming in, there was similar arguments made for religion as a source of subordination for women, because it was believed that in females are the ones who majorly propagate, ठीक है, propagate the religion, they pass on to the children, they practice it themselves. Even then religion has not given that due credit to the women, and it has made women subordinate to men. So these kind of ideas where different social institutions were being studied, and a more gendered approach, you can say, for the first time, you know, these social institutions were challenged, like patriarchy, like religion, like capitalism, and they were made to you know, people were accepting the ideas that how they have over the years made women subordinate to men, right? So you understand. Then comes the contribution of Sherry Ortner. Now what she did, she was one of the, you can say, early proponents of feminist anthropology, and what she talked about how subordination of women is a universal thing and it's a cross cultural phenomena. So this is very important. What she said basically कि एक तो gender subordination या female subordination in particular is a universal phenomena. You go wherever, in whichever culture, in whichever country, women are subordinate to men, and this is because she published an article, Is Female to Male as Nature to Culture. Now very interesting, you know, she is Sherry Ortner basically, and she drew a very interesting you can say comparison. What she said कि females are symbolic of nature, ठीक है, nature as in the, you know, the environment, right? And males are symbolic to culture. So this, she used the ideas of Levi-Strauss. The ideas of Levi-Strauss is binary opposition, universal binary opposition की बात करी थी Levi-Strauss ने. What he said that binary opposition क्या होती है, the contrasts, you know, like you and I में contrast हो गया, right? So these binary oppositions, nature and culture का binary opposition, it talked about that. So what she argued was that women were symbolically associated with nature because women, you know, took out the activities of childbearing. They reproduce, ठीक है, they give birth to children, they care for the children, so they are the nurturers, ठीक है. So nurturers, and nurture कौन करता है? Nurture कोई nature कर सकती है, like the mother god, the, क्या हम nature को, you know, nurturer मानते हैं? Similarly mother is also a nurturer, and hence it is symbolic to that, to nature. And males, because culture क्या है? Culture is, you can say, a social construct, a construct that has been created by man, right? Man, culture is unique to humans because humans have created the concept of culture. So you can say where females are the nurturers and are symbolic to nature, males are symbolic to culture, and with culture they are trying to manipulate the nature, because culture से हम क्या कर रहे हैं? We are trying to manipulate and make our living in this world easy. That is culture, what it is. It is made for our own convenience. So that is why, because what she says is that because you know, females are represented as nature and males are close to culture, because culture has dominated over the nature, therefore males are dominating the females. क्या बोला उसने? फिर से सुनो. Males equivalent to culture, females equivalent to nature, because males ने culture बनाकर they are dominating the nature, तो similarly males are dominating the females because they are different binary opposites, ठीक है. Females are nature, males are culture and culture is dominating the nature, therefore males are dominating the females. So this was a concept given by Sherry Ortner. ठीक है, उसके बाद one of the pioneering you can say contributions of female anthropology or females in anthropology was the idea of domestic power of women. अभी तक तो हमने क्या पढ़ा, that females there was gender inequality, right, that एक perspective of females was missing. ठीक है, all these concepts we have studied. इसके अलावा what he studied was the domestic power of women. So in domestic power of women, what they studied was that although it is believed that females are subordinate to men and they do not possess the kind of power that men have, but it is not true, or it is not always universal when it comes to individual power. अब individual power क्या है? For example, there's a couple, हम बोलते हैं there's a couple, ठीक है, and in that couple, whatever happens in the public sphere, even if it is taken out by a male only, ठीक है, a lot of it is individually negotiated between male and female, and a domestic power or domestic sphere में there's always a female who is influencing the male. So you understand क्या हो रहा है basically. Even if you see that a lot of women, ठीक है, they are in the older times they were illiterate, ठीक है, and they were complying to the societal norms not to speak in a public sphere or all of those ideas. But even then in the closed doors, ठीक है, whenever the issues are discussed, even if the female is not literate one, ठीक है, she will influence that pressure, or she will influence her husband. So whatever this husband does in the outside world is a lot what is the understanding between the husband and the wife. So even though ki females do not have the kind of power that males have, but there is always a domestic power of women. So you understand. So this is also a very contrasting view that was given by the female anthropologist. So you understand, ठीक है ना. So this was one of the concepts, ठीक है. So then this was all about the, you can say, the contribution of female anthropologists in the world over, and the concepts of domestic power of women, the other ideas that we talked about. Now we are going to start and talk about not many, because that is the part of paper 2. So हम जो basic है, we'll going to read it there. Today I'll tell you about 2-3 very important anthropologists. One is Dr. Iravati Karve, ठीक है. I did not write the name here, so I'll just mention the name. Dr. Iravati Karve. Okay. So basically, she challenged the deep-rooted social constructs of the society. So again, the ideas of patriarchy, the deep-rooted social constructs, right? That has been going on from ages, right? She questioned those ideas with her feministic attitude. So what she did, she studied caste system, she studied family, she studied religion, mythology, kinship, so many social institutions she studied, and based on that she always promoted and encouraged women to come out, ask for equal rights, and not even equal, more rights as compared to men. And she always believed that females should go out, they should study, they should empower themselves, because otherwise ye kya hai, it is always a male dominated sphere. And she wrote many books. She was you can say she wrote many books, ठीक है. So some important books are the Bheels of West Kandesh, right, Maharashtra, Land and People. So these books were written by her. I'm not covering it here in a very detail, because in chapter 4 of paper 2 we are going to read about her in detail as it is, right. So just a outline, ठीक है. Then there was Leela Dubey, ठीक है. She was also a very notable sociologist and anthropologist. She was married to one of the anthropologists only, ठीक है, and she studied a lot of tribes like the Gonds, ठीक है, She studied them, and she studied extensively the women's in different tribal groups, in different communities. She expressed on their sexuality, desires, passion, lust, how they circumvent the restrictive conditions that they live in. So the kind of, see, this is the time when androcentric bias was a lot there. So you might be thinking that today these things are very normal, how girls behave and what they do. In the situation जहाँ पे पहले तो situation was a lot more restrictive, right? Today there is a lot of freedom that is given to women because of the attitudinal change and behavioral change in the society. But you believe in 19th century or the 20th century, what was the condition of women, right? That attitude was not there. So to freely profess your sexuality, your desires, your lust, your passion, okay, these ideas were in the closed doors. So how women used to take out their frustration, used to show themselves, okay, these ideas were studied by Leela Dubey. And also how caste affected on gender. So she studied the socio-economic aspects of the society and how they impacted the women. She studied about that. Okay? So one of the important names is Leela Dubey, and about her also we are going to study in the paper too. Okay? And then there is Madhumala Chattopadhyay. Now she was a very important person and not much is mentioned about her in any of the books. Okay? So that is why I've given a new name, because not many people would mention her, right? So she was a woman who she studied principally in the Andaman and Nicobars. So she studied the Onge tribes, the Jarawas, the Sentinelese, and she talked about कि कितना important है to sometimes isolate these groups, because if you do not isolate these groups and these tribal communities, how we can lose them, okay? And what is their reaction when they meet the outsiders. So she principally studied about that, and she was a woman who made the Sentinelese put their arrows down. So these Andaman and Nicobar tribal groups are very isolated from the modern mainstream society, and how they do not accept easily the outsiders, right? But she was one of those people who made place in their hearts also, because she often she behaved as a doctor to them. Okay? So she really took care of them the time she was there in her field works, in all of that. She cared for them as a medic. So वो उनका blood pressure check करेगी. She will keep she lived there for a long time, and she took out her studies there, and she talked about why we should isolate these tribes and not like intermingle a lot with them, and all of those ideas, right? So here we see that how female anthropologists have given a lot of their heart and soul to the subject. But there is a lot of criticism also, and the criticism was like, for example, they have been accused for mirroring the situation that was originally criticized. What was the original situation? That male ethnographers were studying the males, that means the informants were males, and the ethnographers were also males. But now what was happening? These were the females who were studying the females, because अभी तक हमने जितना बात किया है, we have mostly talked about female ideas, how gender, the ideas of sex and gender, domestic power of women, inequality, capitalism affecting women, religion affecting women. So it was all about women. So अभी क्या हो गया था? The original criticism was only males were studying the males, but now females were also doing the same thing. So this was one criticism. Then the other criticism was by the female anthropologists itself, who were you can say not belonging to the mainstream society, and they were women from the ethnic minorities, right? So what they were saying, that they have limited the study of anthropology to only gender issues. So what they were saying that even female anthropologists did not make a lot of effort in making the subject holistic. So they had limited or contained it to only women and gender issues, right? So these were some of the criticisms. So this is a lot of fodder for you to write a good answer for paper 1 and paper 2 also. And I hope you guys liked the lecture. If you did, guys, please like, share and subscribe. And any doubts, any suggestions for the next video, for next weekly, please post. I always look at them, and I always take any topic which you guys ask me to. So it's very important for you to give me suggestions like that, right? So please, guys, like, share and subscribe. Thank you.